Social media. This is something that constantly influences our daily lives, whether it be through the content we consume, the ideas we share, or most importantly for this video's topic, relationships. Relationships are what bring us closer to one another, and through social media, we can all connect and bond with several people, from loved ones to others who share similar interests. But there's one kind of relationship that gets a bad rep due to its nature, and that's a parasocial relationship. In my most recent video, one of the main points I talked about was how there's so many parasocial issues within the VTuber community. And to get a better understanding of what that is, let's look more into it. A parasocial relationship is basically a one-sided relationship where someone shares their emotions, interest, and time towards people like celebrities or influencers, which includes actors, musicians, streamers, VTubers, or even fictional characters. Oh nah, y'all gotta start touching grass. Anyways, these are people who are either unaware of or know little of the individual's existence. And with us being online, we're all bound to eventually encounter a parasocial relationship. While there's a lot of problems and unhealthy behaviors that stems from this, there also seems to be a lot of healthy, thriving communities that were built off of these relationships, which begs the question, are parasocial relationships bad? Now, I know there's tons of stories involving parasocialism in different circles, but with my experience being a streamer, more specifically as a VTuber, I've noticed that being involved in parasocial relationships can be a double-edged sword. Like I said before, there are lots of unhealthy behaviors that come from these relationships, but with the current state of content creation, not only is parasocialism completely unavoidable, but it seems almost necessary if you want to grow and sustain a community. How, you ask? Simple. Most of us content creators start off small, so building a community mostly relies on us talking to or engaging with our audience with the hopes that they'll come back to watch and support us, whether that be in Twitch chat, the YouTube comments section, Discord, or wherever else. But every time this happens, it creates a parasocial interaction, basically meaning the more and more a content creator engages with their audience, the more connected that audience becomes to the content creator, starting what we come to know as a parasocial relationship. Now, remember when I mentioned this shit could be a double-edged sword? Well, there's a number of pros and cons. Let's talk about that real quick. One of the things that gets commonly talked about when mentioning parasocial relationships is how people like to get overly familiar. Now, if you ask me, this has got to be a sign of social ineptitude, and I understand that there are people out there that lack social skills, but it's always the ones that act overly familiar that are overcompensating for it. There's been a few times where a new person will join my Discord or whatever and see me chilling and talking to folks only to jump into VC or convo like, "Hey yo Xander, what up you hoe ass bitch? It's me Gawk 85, what's poppin'?" And then I have to sit there and try not to crash out by drop kicking someone or starting the entire Shibuya incident because Meat Gawk 85 wanted to overstep their bounds.
Xander.exe has stopped responding.
And don't get me started on the new people who get infatuated with my voice and start calling me stuff like daddy. Even people who know me like that don't call me that because they know how weird I find it, but that's besides the point. Like honestly, I get that some of y'all are looking for friendship and attention, but there's levels to this shit. In case you're socially inept, here's a pro tip. You gotta establish a connection and learn some boundaries before you can talk to someone any kind of way. Cause over-familiarizing yourself with someone and getting too personal can easily get you kicked or banned from the community you were looking to be a part of. So put yourself in someone else's shoes for once and imagine how it would feel to you. You do not need to play things up to be cool, and you are not entitled to be there. Speaking of which, there are way too many people that feel way too entitled. These are the kind of people that will find any and every excuse to make everything about themselves no matter what the situation is. And it's always because they want attention. The amount of entitlement that could come from these parasocial relationships are hella annoying. Some of y'all will legit get upset and start tweaking out when you can't talk to or reach out to certain creators. Which is kinda wild because at the end of the day, we are not your friends. Just because somebody happens to make the type of content you like and or acknowledges you does not mean that we owe you anything. Matter of fact, just talking about this reminds me of the time I had some guy get mad at the fact that I didn't hang out with him enough or invite him to be on any of my streams. The craziest part about that was when I tried to call him out on it, he tried to pull the "if I was a woman, I bet you talk to me" card. Like, let's be for real. I really don't give a fuck about all that. As long as you're a decent human being who's respectful and has a good vibe about you, chances are you and I will be cool. But if every conversation leads to you glazing, begging for attention, and getting overly familiar, then I'm most likely gonna avoid you. Remember, not everything is about you. You do not have to be associated with anybody. We all have our own lives with our own issues. Be mindful of that. Since we're on the topic of issues, it's a known fact that everybody deals with trauma. We all have our way of dealing with it too, but out of all the ways of doing so, what is the point of joining into a stream or a Discord VC just to trauma dump? Not only does it make everything awkward, but then everybody's moods get brought down by it. Then we gotta try and pivot the conversation back to a place that's not so depressing. It's one thing if everyone opens the conversation up to allow for that, but if I'm in the middle of cracking jokes and playing one of my favorite games and you come in talking about some, you crashed out on me, cock 85, it caused the Shibuya incident. My dog ran away. My girlfriend left me because I smell like Frito-Lays. I'm sad and I'm broke.
We do not care.
Why should I care? And that's not to say that I don't give a shit about you as an individual, but I don't know you like that, you don't know me like that, and just randomly popping into a stream or VC of mine just to tell your tragic backstory is only going to get you met with awkward silence. Like I said, we all have our own issues, and unless somebody opens up the conversation for you to talk about them, then don't. You should probably get a therapist instead of telling everyone on the internet. Before I end up moving on, I just want to say that I always see other content creators talking about how much they hate issues that come with parasocial relationships, yet some of them won't stop enabling it. Like clearly, if there's issues with someone overstepping their bounds, it's on you to address that. Like some of y'all gotta realize that y'all gotta start setting boundaries if y'all want to reduce the amount of unwanted problems that come with these relationships. Because the second you give people an inch, they're going to take a mile. Nip that shit in the bud early, make your boundaries clear, and you won't see as many problems. Sure, it's not going to stop it completely, but it will reduce problems by a great deal. Moving on. These are all the negative things that I can speak about from experience, so I'm not going to go through every negative aspect of parasocial relationships, otherwise we'd be here all day. I know there's more to them, like love bombing, that weird obsessiveness people have, people building shrines and not wanting folks to be in relationships, on top of a bunch of other stuff, but all I can say about that is don't be a creep, learn to have social awareness, and go outside. Plain and simple. Earlier towards the beginning of the video, I mentioned how parasocialism could be a double-edged sword. We just talked about the negative side of it, so let's move on to some of the positives. So I know it sounds weird for me to say that there are positives to this, given most people's perception of parasocialism, but the truth is there are benefits to having parasocial relationships. One of those benefits being that the relationship can help ease loneliness. I mean, if you think about it, most people have a connection to someone or something, so it only makes sense that having that connection can help ease that feeling, right? For some, being connected to a content creator can make them feel a little less lonely while giving them a sense of belonging. This is yet another benefit that can mean a lot, especially if there's a community they can be a part of. Not to mention that there's a lot of people who've made friends from being a part of a community, and even if they haven't gotten all that close to the content creator, I would still consider finding friendship a positive thing. Also, depending on the content or the content creator, there could be a lot that someone can learn from them, which is another benefit that can help someone have a different outlook on things on top of either validating them or inspiring them to accomplish their goals. Now, I know this isn't every benefit, and I know that there's probably a lot more positive things about parasocial relationships I could mention, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to yap too much more about it, because this would probably go on for hours, so let's wrap things up. At the beginning of the video, I asked, are parasocial relationships bad? And the answer is yes and no. Ultimately, a parasocial relationship is what you make out of it. Like mentioned earlier, it's a double-edged sword, but it's unavoidable at this point. The main takeaways for this video should be to set boundaries, be aware of those boundaries, stop enabling certain behaviors, and don't be weird. If you made it this far into the video, comment your thoughts, and feel free to share your experiences, whether they're positive or negative. And remember, life's short. Have fun.
Yeah. Hey. Whoa. Let's go. Every time I come around, I start a different vibe. Now I'm living out this.